Okay, now let me start over. So welcome. Excited to be talking about 2025 funding, particularly for your offering, which is offering two. And as you know, we sent out budgets a couple of days ago for you to fill out for your 2025 funding, and they look a little bit different. So I wanted to go through that this morning with you.
Okay.
And so I'm just going to jump right in. Feel free to stop me if you have any questions, anything you want to talk about more. We will have some time for questions at the end as well, and I will stay until all has been answered. So first of all, probably if you remember, the original grant period went from April 1st, 2023 to March 30th, 2025. We have determined that it's likely we'll have sufficient funds to add what we're going to call a second allotment. So some things to remember about that second allotment is we're using unspent 2024 funds. It is subject to HHS approval of our unspent funds request. So we would be able to add the second allotment when TASA receives those funds. And there's a process to that. As if any of you went through, and most of you did, the unspent funds request, we have to request them from HHSC, they approve it, send it back to us, and then that's when we can use those funds. So that will be the same process that we'll use to secure the second allotment funding, or to make sure that it is going to be available to us. So the second allotment funds would only be available from the time we give them to you through your contract to September 30th. So it's not something that you could go back the entire year. So those funds would only need to be spent during that time, from the time we put them in your contract amendment to September 30th.
Okay.
So we want to prepare as if that allotment's going to go through, and we don't have final authorization yet. We do have to wait for HHSC to approve it. But what we're going to do to prepare is we move that grant period from April 2023 to March 30th, 2025. We move that grant period now to September 30th, 2025. So we're going to send out one-year contracts, and those are going to be one-year contracts regardless of whether that second allotment is funded. Does that make sense?
Okay.
And so if funded, then we'll add the second allotment via a contract amendment.
But so do we just we're just going to do one whole contract, one whole request, right?
When you get the budget, if you've already seen it, it has two budget requests. You'll request your initial, what's called an initial budget, and then you'll request your second allotment.
Monthly. Okay, I'm looking at the budget here.
Okay, so your budget has 3 tabs on it now. So it has room for initial budget, it has room for a second allotment, and it has your project summary. So you'll complete your initial budget first. And what we're saying is plan for that initial budget to fund you from 6 to 8 months. And we said that because it might take a little time for the unspent funds, for us to receive the unspent funds, and then be able to add it to your contract amendment. So we wanted you to know that up front, so you can plan that initial budget to last until the second allotment comes in.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Then you'll complete a second allotment budget request. Then you'll complete your project summary for the whole year.
Mm-hmm.
The minimum for your each one of those budgets, the minimum is 40,000, the maximum is 65,000.
65,000 for each one?
Yes. So the second allotment, again, that minimum is going to be 40,000 to 65,000.
Okay.
On that second allotment, you're only going to be able to request up to what your original budget request is. So for instance, if you go in and you make your initial budget request for 65,000, then you can make your second allotment request for 65,000.
Okay,
What you couldn't do is make your first allotment for like 40,000 and your second allotment for 65.
okay,
So your second allotment cannot exceed your initial budget. Now, your initial budget, your second allotment, you can request any amount in between the minimum and maximum, regardless of what you requested last year. So for instance, if you didn't request the maximum last year, you can request the maximum this year.
okay.
Okay. So some things to remember that's going to apply to both your initial budget and your second allotment. So you've got to request funding for a sexual assault advocate. They have to be on that grant for at least 85%. So as you're going through your initial budget, your second allotment budget, make sure that you have a sexual assault advocate on both of those at least 85% of the time. And then staff incentives are still going to be allowed. They cannot exceed 50% of your total budget. So you can put 15% on your initial budget, 15% on your second allotment.
Okay.
And then
So we,
oh, go ahead.
sorry, Peggy. So we can do percent on each one,
Yes.
15 on each. So if we don't get it extended after April, or we just lose out on that other second part? Is that how?
Second allotment depends on unspent funds, but we've planned it such where it's, we're how do I say, very cautiously optimistic that it's going to be there. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
we just cannot guarantee it, but
That's just.
it looks very likely that's going to be, we're going to be
Okay.
able to do it.
Okay. And then you said on the forms, Peggy, you said that there's a separate column for the second.
There's a
I
separate tab. So if you look down at the bottom, you have one tab that says initial budget, and you have the second tab says second allotment. And the third tab will say project summary.
Okay, I don't see that on our forms.
Okay. Oh. Let me check. Hold on just a second. Oh, I think if I start something else, it's gonna mess up the screenshot. So hold on just a second.
Okay, yeah, because I don't see that on our forms.
Okay.
Okay, I saw it, Peggy.
See it? Okay, awesome.
It says second budget.
Yes, so it's a whole new budget. You just,
Okay.
yeah, for your second allotment. Okay, now let me start sharing again. Okay, let me start
Betty.
sharing. Okay, can you see that now? Okay, so just a reminder on survivor support, you are able to have items kept on hand for survivors and items purchased for specific survivors. So just a reminder for your grant goes for your initial budget and your second allotment. Third-party payments for survivors are not allowed on this grant. So does anybody have any questions about survivor support? And then questions. So that was kind of a very short presentation. So I'm going to stop sharing and then just let me know kind of what questions you might have. You can just feel free to unmute yourself.
Peggy, I have a question. When I was trying to work on the budget, this morning, well, I just noticed that you also just said that, we need to make sure that we have not only 6 months, but maybe even 8 months in the budget. So do I make the budget for 8 months? Would that be the preferred?
But no, the minimum and the maximum those are set. What I guess what we're saying is that from the time it takes us to get the unspent funds and get it into your contract, just be aware that it might take 6 to 8 months from the beginning of your grant. Does that make sense? So we just wanted you to be able to plan for that
Okay,
as you're working through your budget and thinking about where your priorities are.
okay, okay. So the 65,000 is for the 6 month budget, or, right?
It's for your initial budget, correct? And
Okay.
then you can ask for another 65,000 for your second allotment.
Okay, I see. Yes. Okay, thank you.
Sense. And for those who may have can't come in a little later, you can only ask for your second allotment. You can only ask for up to what you ask in your initial budget. That can't exceed your initial budget. Any questions?
And the due date, it's on the 16th, right, Peggy?
Yes, it's due on August 16th. And
Okay.
so kind of what is going to happen with that process, once you send it in, then we're going to review it. We're hopeful to send out contracts by September 10th. And then, like always, we may have a TA call, or there may be some revisions needed on your project summary or, on your budgets. And so we'll finalize all that in between that time and when your grant starts, because this year we hope to have your budgets in Salesforce ready to go by October 1st. So you'll be able to see them by October 1st. Makes sense. Okay. I am going to stop the recording